Yeah, in this video, we'll be talking about the different types of cement and their uses. So different cement hardness and what these cements are being used for. So from the first row, you can see that we have the type of cement, then the description of the cement, then the uses of the said cement. So we're going to be looking at it one by one so that we'll talk about what are these cement. You understand? We will now know the description of what the cement looks like, then the uses of the said cement. What is the cement actually used for? So for the types of cement, we have the ordinary Portland cement, which is usually known as OPC, and it is a grade 43 cement. So that is the first type of cement that we have. Then the second one is PPC, that is Portland Pozzolana cement. You understand? The names are very, very funny, but that is how it is. Portland Pozzolana cement. So it is known as PPC. Then we have the PSC. That is Portland Slag Cement. So that is the PSC. Then we have the RHC. That is Rapid Hardening Cement. So we are still going to be looking at the description and the usage. So I just want to just list the type. Then we have the low heat cement. Then we have the sulfate resisting cement, which is the RSC. Then we have the low heat cement, the surface resisting cement, which is the SRC. Then we have cement, that is the white cement. Then we have hydrophobic cement. Then we have air entraining cement. So these are the 9 types of cement that we have. So we are going to look at the description of each of these cements now. Yeah, for the description, ordinary Portland cement. So it is most common type of cement. So ordinary Portland cement is the most common type of cement. And it is suitable for general construction work. That means all your general construction work. Then we have the Portland Pozzolana cement, that is the PPC. So it is made by grinding OPC clinker with poluzanic material. That means it's still your ordinary cement, but the difference is that this one is grinded with pozzolanic material. So then better durability and resistance to chemicals. So it has a better durability and also resistance to chemical. Then we have Portland slag cement, which is still made by grinding OPC clinker with granulated blast furnace slag. So everything you see here is still OPC, OPC, OPC. You understand? But it's just that you grind the clinker with granulated blast furnace slag. Then it has high strength and more durable. So the Portland slag cement is has higher strength than the OPC itself and the PPC, right? Then we have a rapid hardening cement. So for rapid hardening cement, we have finer grinding and special additives. So it has a finer, that means the texture is finer. It has a fine texture, and it is having a special additives added to the rapid hardening cement. Then it also gains strength quickly. So the rapid hardening cement tends to gain strength quickly. So the setting time is lower. You understand? Or yeah, is lower than that of the normal setting time of your OPC. So if the setting time of OPC is 25 days or 27 days, that means the that of rapid hardening might be maybe 15 days, 10 days, depending on what you think. So we have low heat cement. So for low heat cement, it produces less heat of hydration. Normally when you mix your cement, there is this heat of hydration in the mix that it generates. That is why you feel your cement is hot to an extent. So this low heat cement produces less heat of hydration. That means it produces less heat of hydration than useful for massive concrete structure. That means when you have a massive concrete structure, so you can actually use this type of cement. Yeah, so we have our sulfate resisting cement, which is our SRC. So it has low C3A content. Then it resists attack of sulfate in soil and water. So if you need, this depends on the specification that you need for your construction. So if you maybe your soil has a whole lot of sulfate in the soil that you are making use of, so you can actually use sulfate resisting cement, so that it will tend to attack the plenty sulfate you have in the soil and in your water. Then we have white cement. Yeah, for the white cement, it is made from raw materials with low iron content. So the material in which the white cement is made from has low iron content. Then white or off-white in color. So the color texture of the cement is white, and you also have that which is off-white in color. Then we have hydrophobic cement. So this hydrophobic cement is treated with hydrophobic material. Then it also repels water because of that hydrophobic material that is used in the cement. So it helps it to actually repel water. Then we have air entraining cement. So contains air entraining agent. For hydrophobic, that means it is made from hydrophobic material. Then for air entraining cement, contains air entraining agents. Then it also improves workability and resistance toward freezing. So it helps to resist freezing. Yeah, so we'll now be talking about the uses. So for ordinary Portland cement, so it is used in RCC structures, that is your reinforced concrete structures. Then it is also used in buildings, houses, bridges, roads, then plastering and flooring, right? Then for Portland pozzolana cement, that is the PPC. It is used in hydraulic structures like your dam, anything that has to do with water. Then your dams, your canals, your foundation, your sewage works. So you tend to use these Portland pozzolana cement. Then for your Portland slag cement, it is used in marine structures, like your bridges, your flyovers, your foundation, you understand, in aggressive soils. So you tend to use, this is your PSC. Then for rapid hardening cement, it is used in road repairs, you understand, precast elements, then early framework removals, then cold weather concreting. So maybe when you are trying to do your concreting in a cold environment, so you can usually make use of rapid hardening cement. Then maybe when you're constructing your bridges, you understand, your pile cap and the likes of that, you can just make use of your rapid hardening cement. Then for the low heat cement, it is used in dams, then massive foundation where you have massive foundations, then rafts and retaining walls. So for your raft foundation, you make use of your low heat cement. Then your retaining wall also, you also make use of, your low heat cement. Then for sulfate resisting cement, so it is used in foundations in sulfate soil. So maybe after you've done your soil tests, you found out that the soil contains a whole lot of sulfur in it. So you can actually use this sulfate restraining cement. Then marine works, then sewage system. So for your sewage system, you can also make use of your sulfate resisting cement. Then for your white cement, it's usually used in your architectural works, your decorative furnitures, finishes, marble, tiles, then terrazzo, even your POP. You can make use of this your white cement. Then for hydrophobic cement, it is storage in wet condition, right? You can actually store your hydrophobic cement in wet condition, unlike the other OPC that tends to get destroyed or solidified with water. But for your hydrophobic cement, you can store it even in wet condition and it will still be good. Then construction in raining season, so you can still use this hydrophobic cement in construction in maybe during rainy season and so on. Then remote and hilly area, you can still make use of your hydrophobic cement in a remote area or in a hilly area. Then for air entraining cement, cold climate concreting. So there are some areas whereby the condition is so cold, so you need this type of air entraining cement. Then for pavement, then durable structure. So all this is where you tend to make use of your air entraining cement. So this is a complete guide to understand the different types of the cements that we have, and their description of this cement, then the uses of this cement, so that you'll be able to give advice or even know which cement type to use in your construction activities.